Hi, I'm Daniel, 38, and 3 months ago I did the biggest, flashiest, borderline insane thing I've ever done in my life. I bought my parents a $425,000 seaside mansion for their 50th wedding anniversary. And last week, when I showed up to surprise them with a second round of celebration photos, my own mother answered the door, stared me straight in the face, and said, "Can I help you?" Like I was a stranger selling lawn fertilizer. Now, before you imagine some sweet, well-meaning confusion, no. She wasn't dazed. She wasn't joking. She wasn't having a medical episode. She looked me dead in the eye, cool as a cucumber, and pretended not to know her own son. I'll back up about 6 seconds, because that's literally all the time it took for my soul to leave my body. I'd driven 4 hours from the city, hopped out of the car, bouquet in one hand, that stupid grin you get when you're proud of yourself plastered across my face. I rang the doorbell expecting my mom's usual greeting, arms open, yelling my name like it's been 40 years instead of 4 weeks. Instead, door opens. She peers out like she's checking for raccoons. Then she says it again, slower. "Sir, can I help you with something?" And then, I hear my dad's voice in the background saying, "Honey, who's at the door?" Like he's about to come investigate a traveling solicitor. For one brief moment, I genuinely wondered if I'd slipped into a parallel universe where Daniel the son never existed, and some other lucky child gifted them an oceanfront dream home. I cleared my throat and said, "Mom, it's me. Daniel." Nothing. Not a flicker. Not even a raised eyebrow of recognition. And when my dad finally stepped into view, he froze just like she did, like I was the guy who shows up at 6 a.m., offering duct cleaning services, and he said, "Why are you here?" My parents. The people I just dropped almost $500,000 on. The couple whose wedding photos hang in my apartment. The 2 humans whose DNA crafted my entire face. Acting like I was a complete stranger trespassing on their porch. That was the moment, right there, when I realized something was deeply, spectacularly wrong. And not in a, "Haha, Mom's forgetting again," kind of way. More like, I might be the punchline of a cosmic joke. Wrong. I stood there on their brand new stone porch, holding a bouquet that now felt like the world's saddest prop, while my parents stared at me like I was casing the place for a heist. "Mom," I tried again, because surely the second attempt would break the spell. "Dad, it's me. Daniel. Your son. The one who bought you this house." My mother's lips tightened. Not confused. Not emotional. Just irritated. Like I was a telemarketer who had somehow found her physical address. She said, "Young man, I think you have the wrong property." The wrong property? I turned around in case I had hallucinated the entire coastline, but no. There were the white shutters I picked out. The wraparound porch I paid extra for. The wind chimes she specifically said she wanted because the ocean deserves a soundtrack. Everything was exactly where I put it. My dad took a step forward and grabbed the edge of the door, body angled as if he was preparing to shut me out. "Sir," he said, and I swear I flinched. "I'm asking you to leave. Right now." I should note something here. My dad has called me buddy since I was 4 years old. Sometimes champ, if he's feeling paternal. But sir? Never. Not even once. I'd have fainted, except I was too busy being offended. "Dad, what are you doing?" I whispered. "Is this some kind of prank? Did you get into those edibles Aunt Joanne brought to the reunion? Because I promise you I'm not high enough for this." They exchanged a look, one of those silent marital glances married couples have perfected over 5 decades. Then my mom's face softened, but in the wrong direction. Pity. Concern. Like I was the one malfunctioning here. "Honey," she said carefully, "I think you should go home. Wherever that is." "You mean 4 hours that direction?" I pointed behind me like a deranged crossing guard. "Back to the apartment I FaceTimed you from last night? You remember that, right? You told me not to forget the cream cheese for Sunday bagels?" My mom nodded slowly, but not in agreement. In that, "Let's not escalate the crazy man on our porch." "Way." My dad added, "We're calling the police if you don't step off the property." And that was when the emotional part of my brain short-circuited and the logical part tried, desperately, to step in. My parents were not playing. My parents were not confused. My parents were not in danger. But they were pretending I didn't exist. And judging by the firmness in their voices, they were prepared to escalate. I swallowed hard, stepped backwards down the porch steps, feeling the flowers droop in my hand like even they were embarrassed for me. Okay, I said, mostly to myself. No problem. Totally fine. My own parents kicked me out of a house I bought them. Happens all the time. My voice cracked, and my dignity evaporated with it. As I reached my car, I heard the door shut behind me. Not gently. Not kindly. It slammed. And I drove away from the mansion, the ocean glittering like it was laughing at me, trying to figure out what in the world could make two loving parents pretend their only son had never existed. The drive back into town felt like re-entering civilization after being abducted by aliens. My parents' behavior was so bizarre, so surgically coordinated, that my brain cycled through every explanation except the obvious one. Memory loss? No. Prank? They were too methodical. Identity theft? By who? A Daniel impersonator who also buys mansions. Cult? Slight chance, but they still had their original haircuts. Doppelganger? Probably not the go-to assumption, but I was spiraling. By the time I pulled into a gas station, I was sweating through my shirt and inhaling coffee like oxygen. And that's where it happened, the moment that cracked everything open. I was standing at the checkout counter when the clerk, a woman in her 50s with the confidence of someone who stocks Slim Jims for a living, glanced at my card and said, "Back in town, huh?" I blinked. "Do I know you?" She huffed a laugh, not unkindly. "Honey, you were in here 3 days ago buying a whole cart of beers. Said you were settling in for a long weekend at the new beach house." 3 days ago? I had been in my apartment 3 days ago. Working. Eating microwaved enchiladas. Not here. Definitely not settling into anything. "You must be mistaken," I said. "I haven't been in this town since I handed over the house keys to my parents a month ago." She tilted her head, eyebrows rising. "Well, if you weren't here, you've got one heck of a twin. Same face. Same glasses. Same jacket, even." I felt a cold rush up my spine. "Same jacket? Black windbreaker. Nike swoosh. Looked just like the one you're wearing." I stared down at my jacket like it had betrayed me. Before I could ask anything else, the clerk added, "Oh, and your folks were in here yesterday morning. Your mom said you were settling in nicely." Settling in nicely. Settling in. Like I was the one living in that house. Like I had moved in. Like I had intentionally reclaimed the property. My stomach dropped. My parents weren't pretending not to know me. They were pretending I was someone else. I left the store in a daze, walking toward my car as if gravity had doubled. And then, because the universe apparently enjoys theatrical irony, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but the town was small, and the timing was too eerie. I answered. "Daniel?" a man's voice said. Calm. Familiar in a way I couldn't place. "We need to talk. Now." "Who is this?" A pause that made my bones tighten. "You know who this is." I didn't. But my instinct said I should. He continued, "If you're back in town, you need to stop whatever you're doing. It's jeopardizing everything." "I don't know what you're talking about." Another silence. Then softly, "Daniel, don't make this harder. You signed the agreement. You promised you wouldn't return." My pulse spiked so fast I felt it in my teeth. "I never signed anything." "Yes," the voice said quietly. "You did. Before you left." Something inside me snapped, the final thread holding back the dread I'd been trying to ignore. Someone had been here. Someone who looked exactly like me. Someone my parents believed was me. Someone who had signed an agreement on my behalf. Someone who had taken my place. And my parents, my real, living, sane parents, were covering for him. "Meet me," I said breathlessly. "Tell me everything." But the man's tone sharpened. "No. Stay away. If you keep pushing, you're going to ruin all of our lives." And he hung up. I stood there in the parking lot, phone still to my ear, staring at my own reflection in the car window. And for the first time in my life, I had the unmistakable feeling that someone else was staring back. I didn't drive anywhere at first. I just sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel like I was trying to strangle answers out of it. Someone was impersonating me. Someone who'd convinced my parents, my actual parents, that he was their son and I was the intruder. And the worst part? They were protecting him. Straight up, shutting me out. "We'll call the police." Protecting. After 10 minutes of staring into middle distance like a man waiting for an alien mothership, I pulled myself together enough to drive back toward the mansion. Not all the way, just close enough to watch from a distance. But before I even got to the street, I saw it. My dad's truck wasn't in the driveway anymore. Instead, there was a car I'd never seen before. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows. The kind of car you drive when you're either a government agent or a man who says, "I don't do small talk," at dinner parties. Hard hammering, I found a place to park half a block down behind a wall of hedges. I wasn't a detective, but I was determined to get at least one data point in this Twilight Zone situation. 5 minutes later, the front door opened. And a man stepped out. A man who looked exactly like me. Not similar jawline or same haircut. No. This guy could have passed a retinal skin pretending to be me. Same height. Same shoulders. Same hair that refuses to lie flat on the left side no matter how much product I drown it in. He stepped onto the porch like he owned it, my parents' seaside mansion that I bought. My mom walked out behind him, hand on his arm, beaming the way she used to beam when I got promoted or won stupid middle school awards. My dad followed, proud, relaxed, zero tension in sight. I felt something inside me go cold. Not hot with anger, cold. Like someone had opened a freezer inside my lungs. The other me laughed at something my dad said. Laughed with my laugh. The one I didn't even realize I had until I heard it coming out of a stranger's mouth. And then he tossed a duffel bag into the sedan's back seat. Was he leaving? Was he arriving? What in the world was happening? I ducked lower behind the hedge as he turned toward the street. He didn't see me, but I saw him, every detail, every angle, every expression, and there was no denying it. This wasn't a cousin. This wasn't a long-lost brother. This wasn't some weird modeling coincidence. This man was my double. My dad clapped him on the back like he was proud of him. My mom hugged him. Hugged him with the warmth she used to save for me. The hug lasted too long. I felt genuinely nauseous. And then, just to twist the knife, my mom said, loud enough for the ocean breeze to carry it, "Be careful, sweetheart." Sweetheart. That was my name in her mouth. The double smiled and said, "You know I will." He got in his car. Drove off. My parents waved until he turned the corner. And I, crouched behind a bush like a bootleg James Bond, finally understood the real horror. My parents weren't pretending not to know me. They knew him. They chose him. And they were rejecting me. As soon as the sedan disappeared, something in me broke free of logic. I stood, brushed off the leaves, marched straight toward the house, and knocked. Hard. My dad opened the door this time. His eyes widened, just for a fraction of a second, before his expression slammed into a mask. "Sir?" he said again. Cold. "You need to leave." "No." I pushed the word out through gritted teeth. "I just saw him. The guy who looks like me. The one you're calling your son." My dad stared at me, stone-faced. "My son is on his way out of town," he said slowly, pointedly. "And he won't be back for a few weeks." I swallowed. "That's not your son. That's an imposter. I am your son." My mother appeared behind him, face strained of warmth. "If you don't leave," she said, voice shaking now, "we will call the police. Please. Please don't make us do that." "Make them do that? Make them?" I staggered back a step, suddenly dizzy. "Mom," I whispered. "Dad? Why are you doing this? Why are you letting someone replace me?" My dad's jaw tightened. Not anger, fear. "Daniel," he said quietly, "you don't understand what you're stepping into." He still remembered my name. He just wasn't using it for me. I opened my mouth to demand answers. But he cut me off with a final, deadly serious warning. "If you keep pushing this, son," the word hit like a physical blow, "you're going to end up hurt." He shut the door. Locked it. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just identity theft. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was bigger. And my own parents were in on it. I drove to the marina because it was the only place in town where I could breathe without seeing something that made my brain fold in on itself. I paced the boardwalk for 20 minutes, muttering to myself like a man negotiating hostage terms with his own sanity. Someone replaced me. My parents accepted it. And they were terrified of me asking why. I needed answers. And answers, apparently, needed company, because that unknown number called again. This time I answered before the first ring finished. What did you do to them? I snapped. My parents. What did you tell them? Why do they think you're me? A long sigh came through the receiver. Daniel. Daniel. You're making this worse. Stop calling me like we're cousins at Thanksgiving. Who are you? He hesitated. Then said, Meet me at the old lighthouse. 10 minutes. Alone. Or what? Or you'll never get your life back. That was honestly the least comforting sentence anyone has ever said to me. But I went. Of course I went. Because what else do you do when your life begins to look like the prequel to a psychological thriller? You follow the cryptic instructions of the man who stole your entire identity. Obviously. The lighthouse loomed over the cliffs, abandoned, peeling white paint flapping in the wind. I parked, heart pounding, and walked inside. He was there. My double turned toward me, hands raised like he was trying to show he wasn't dangerous, which somehow made him more dangerous. Seeing him up close was disorienting in a way mirrors could never prepare me for. It was like looking at a version of myself from a future where I'd made slightly better life choices. Same face, yes, but calmer. Collected. Almost practiced. Start talking, I said. He didn't flinch. Okay. But you're not going to like it. Try me. You weren't supposed to come back. That's not an explanation. He motioned for me to sit on a concrete ledge. I didn't. He sat anyway, like he had all the time in the world. I moved in because you left, he said. You left the life. You left the house. You left your parents. You signed the agreement saying you wouldn't return. I never signed anything. He looked up at me with a pity so familiar it turned my stomach. It was my pity. My expressions. My face. That's the problem. You don't remember. I almost laughed. Remember what? That I gave away my parents? He shook his head. No. That you gave away your life. The world tilted. My pulse roared in my ears. He continued painfully gentle. You sold it, Daniel. Contractually. Legally. Permanently. I what? You sold your identity. To me. I stared at him, horrified. He went on. Your name. Your history. Your relationships. All of it. You want it out. No. I whispered. No, that's insane. Why would I do that? Because you were desperate. You came to me. You offered everything. I paid you for it. And you signed the agreement saying you wouldn't come back or interfere. I don't remember any of this. That's part of the deal. Full separation. Clean break. My voice cracked. My parents, did they know? He nodded. They helped you. They said goodbye. You asked them to treat me like their son from then on. You told them it was what you wanted. I staggered back, shaking my head, but he kept talking, soft and steady, like this was a conversation he'd rehearsed 1,000 times. You said you didn't want the responsibility anymore. The expectations. The pressure. You said you wanted freedom. And I gave you that. You walked away from everything. And now you're breaking the contract. That's not possible. I would never abandon them. You did, he said. Willingly. I felt sick. Physically sick. I didn't sign anything. I said. Show me. Show me the contract. He shook his head. It's sealed. Protected. You knew you'd try to come back if you weren't. I laughed in disbelief, but tears were forming in my eyes. He stood, stepped closer, my face staring into my face. You have to leave town, he said softly. You can't reclaim what you gave up. If you try, they'll get the authorities involved. Or worse. What's worse? His expression darkened. Enforcement. Enforcement. Like this was some corporate acquisition of my entire existence. He put a hand on my shoulder, my own hand, only steadier. Daniel, go. Please. Before they decide you're a threat to the agreement. I slapped his hand away. I'm not giving up my life. You already did. And then, from behind us, the air shifted. Footsteps. My father's voice. Step away from him. We both turned. My parents stood in the lighthouse doorway. Not confused. Not conflicted. Resolute. My mother's eyes brimmed, not with love, but grief. My dad said low and cold. He told you to stay away. We warned you. You broke the agreement. I backed up slowly. Dad, please. Please don't do this. His jaw tightened. This is not your family anymore. My mother whispered. Daniel, run. But I couldn't move. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure who she was warning. Me. Or him. My dad reached inside his jacket, and I swear my heart stopped. My father, the man who once yelled at me for climbing a wet ladder, was reaching for something like he'd done it before. The double stepped between us, palms up. Stop. He's leaving. He understands now. I absolutely did not understand, but I also very much wanted to live long enough to understand later. My dad didn't lower his hand. His voice was flat. He violated the agreement. My mom grabbed his arm. Enough. Please. Not here. Something unspoken passed between them, something that made my stomach drop. My dad's hand finally eased away from whatever he'd been reaching for. But the message landed loud and clear. This wasn't a metaphorical contract. This wasn't symbolic. This wasn't emotional. This was enforced. I took one shaky step back. Tell me why. I whispered. Why would I ever sign away my life? My mother's face collapsed, not with guilt, but with sorrow. Like she was mourning me in real time. You wanted out, she said softly. You said you couldn't handle the pressure anymore. You said you didn't want to disappoint us again. Again? I shook my head. That doesn't make sense. I talked to you every week. Everything was fine. She winced. Sweetheart, you haven't spoken to us in almost a year. The floor of the lighthouse may as well have dropped into the sea. No, I said. No, that's not possible. I called you last week. We talked about bagels. You asked me about my work. You. My father cut in, his tone the final blow. That wasn't us. My breath caught. Then who? The double answered for them. Me. I felt the world tilt, sway, collapse around the edges. You what? I've been maintaining your old relationships, he said, cleaning the trail, keeping the illusion intact so you could have your new start. My voice cracked. What new start? He hesitated. You were in a bad place when you came to me, he said quietly. You didn't want your life anymore. You didn't want the stress, the job, the obligations, the family expectations. You told me you were drowning. I don't remember any of that. That was intentional. You signed for a full severance. Clean mental break. You didn't want the weight of who you were. My parents looked at me, not with anger, but resignation. Acceptance. They'd already grieved the son they lost, and chosen the replacement they could keep. Please leave town, Mom whispered. We can't protect you if you stay. I don't need protection. You're my parents. Dad shook his head. We were. Those two words hurt more than anything. The double stepped closer, not threatening but firm. If you stay, enforcement gets involved. They will remove you from this identity permanently. Remove me how? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. I finally understood the warning. Identity wasn't just paperwork to these people. It was property. And I was trespassing on something I'd apparently sold. I backed toward the lighthouse stairs, shaking. Daniel, the double said, my name sounding wrong from his mouth. You can build something new. You're free. Take it. Free. I had never felt less free in my life. At the doorway, I looked at my parents one last time. Do you even want me alive? I asked. My mother sobbed. Of course we do. But not here. Not now. You made your choice. My father added. And we honored it. Honored it. By erasing me. I turned and ran. Out of the lighthouse. Across the gravel. Into my car. They didn't chase me. They didn't need to. Whatever enforcement was, it felt bigger than them. Bigger than me. Bigger than anything I wanted to understand. I drove until the town shrank in my rearview mirror. Drove until the ocean disappeared. Drove until my hands stopped shaking, hours later. And somewhere around midnight, I realized something. If I truly did sign away my past, if I truly sold my identity, if someone took my name, my home, my family, then there was one thing left that belonged entirely to me. My future. I checked into a cheap motel under a name I made up on the spot. It felt like slipping into a spare skin. Strange, but mine, untouched, unclaimed. I don't know who I was before the agreement. I don't know what drove me to give up everything. Maybe I was desperate. Maybe I was broken. Maybe I thought disappearing would be easier than living. But I do know this. I'm not disappearing again. Tomorrow, I start digging. If I signed a contract, I'll find it. If someone stole my life, I'll get answers. If there's an entire system behind this, I'm going to uncover it. And if that double thinks he's the only one who can be Daniel, he has no idea who he's dealing with. This story isn't over for him. But for now. For tonight.